going on, guys? It's History Obscured, and today I'm going to be going over the Yoruba Diaspora in the Americas. Now, before we get started, one thing I do want to say is that I am a Yoruba myself, or so-called, and I didn't know how deep Yoruba history was, alongside with the other tribes, alright, concerning their diasporas. But in relation to the Yoruba tribe, I did not know how extensive that history was until I started reading books, alright? Now, in relation to the diaspora, many of the Yoruba slaves that were transported from Nigeria to the Americas, okay, were mainly transported to the southern regions, okay? Now, the main influx, or the largest influx of Yoruba slaves came in to the regions of Brazil and Cuba, mainly in the 19th century. But the largest influx of slaves that came into the Americas came to Brazil, alright? And it was up to 40% of transportees that were taken to the city of Bahia. Alright, hence why you will observe, once you do your research, that the largest Yoruba community is found in Brazil, mainly in Bahia, okay? And the tribe, or the Yoruba subgroup that is in that city are referred to as the Nagos, or the Nagos, okay? Which comes from the term Anago, which is either a region or a tribe in Nigeria, okay? So you see that there's an influence of Yoruba culture and identity with the name itself, all right? Now, besides that, you also have Yoruba subgroups such as the Lokomi, which are in Cuba, mainly in the city of Havana, all right, which, make up to about 20%. Then you have another Yoruba subgroup called the Mina, which you will find in northeastern Brazil in the city of Rio de Janeiro. I believe that's how you say it, Rio de Janeiro, something like that. Okay, so you see that the Yoruba diaspora mainly touched down in those regions, okay? But you will also find Yoruba communities in Ghana. You will find Yoruba communities in Trinidad and Tobago. You also find Yoruba communities in Saint Dominique and the French Caribbean and Sierra Leone. And many of these Yoruba slaves that were taken into these regions at some point in time actually returned back to Nigeria. You understand? But the main focus that I want to keep my eye on is the population that were transported to the cities of Brazil, Cuba, and mainly Brazil and Cuba. All right. Now, many of these Yoruba subgroups, when you do your research, many of the practices that you will find in amongst the subgroups, such as the Nago and the Lokomi, they parallel very closely with the Yorubas. Why is that? Because many of the Yorubas that were taken as slaves and were transported to the Americas, right? They took their history, identity, and their culture with them, and they established it in the cities where they were transported as slaves. Okay, now that was common. I'm not saying that the Yorubas were the only ones that did that, but the influence of that practice in the Americas is very high. Now, when you look at many of the slaves that were taken to North America, a lot of them do not know their history past slavery. A lot of them cannot connect the African country that they came from when they were there. Okay? Why? Because that history was totally wiped out. Difference is, with the Yorubas, they took their religion with them, okay? And they established it in those communities, all right? Now, an example of that is the Lokomi, okay? Now, Now there's a practice, not something that I'm proud of, but there's a practice called Santeria, okay, which is a custom which promotes voodoo, or the practice of voodoo, okay. That was strong amongst the Yorubas, even to this day, alright, in their cult practices, but the world knows it as juju, okay, which is also voodoo. This is something that the Yorubas are well embedded in and engraved in, okay, and that same passion that they have in Nigeria concerning that practice reflects the same passion that the Cubans have, showing you what? That there is a parallel, a strong parallel to prove that those people are the same, okay. Now, what else do I want to go into? The term Nego, alright, and Lukumi, right? These were terms that came into play in the 16th century. Okay, so these were not new terms. Sorry, these were not ancient terms. These came into play, alright, during the 16th century, which was the beginning of Yoruba slaves being transported to the Americas. Okay, so again, I would say in between the early 1700s, or even just before that, all the way up to the mid 1800s. We're talking about 1850. These were the terms that they went by. Okay, so that's just another important thing to know. Now you also have the Mina. The Mina are another subgroup which I mentioned earlier. Alright, they're another Yoruba subgroup, and they are found in the region of Rio de Janeiro. Okay, they're more so a smaller percentage of the Yoruba subgroup, but they're still, fairly active. Okay, only difference with the Mina is that name was given to them by the Portuguese. Okay, so they were colonized by the Portuguese, and they were also branded that name by them. That's the only difference. All right, but in terms of the three main subgroups, the Nago, the Lukumi, and the Mina will be the main three that consist of majority of the influx of Yoruba slaves that went to the Americas. All right, but as I said again, the Nago make up to 40%. Now the reason why I'm going over this history, all right, is because it's very important to understand that the culture extends itself into regions that we may not have known that there were communities that existed comprising of the Yorubas. All right, Yorubas, from what I know, did not make the majority of slaves that were transported to the north, but there were thousands, I'm talking about thousands of Yoruba slaves that were taken from Nigeria to the Americas, which and I'm making reference to the South. Okay, and a lot of people don't know that many Brazilian communities are even fluent in the Yoruba language too. Okay, but again, this is just information that some of you may not have known. Okay, I'm going to touch more on this, and I am going to focus on each tribe one by one, but today's topic was just focusing on the Yoruba diaspora. Okay, so for you guys that are Yoruba, all right, my Nigerian brothers and sisters, do some history on this. All right, because we got brothers and sisters over there in the Americas, and we didn't even know. Why? Because that history was hidden. Again, a lot of the time when we're taught about slavery, we're only taught about the slave ships. We're only taught about the atrocities that slaves had to face, but we don't really dig deep into where the slaves went, all right, and how they established communities in the regions that they were sent to by their oppressor. And that's what this video here is. That's what the video that I've made today is about. All right, so again, make sure you're studying and reading on your history, because there's so much out there, especially history that can motivate and give you an understanding of your culture and your purpose. Alright, so that's all I'm going to go in today. I will touch on this topic again. Alright, just focus on the tribe specifically. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there. That's it from me. Here's the Real Obscured. Peace.